Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today this is going to be a little bit more of a controversial video. Today we're going to be talking about the state of New York and some things that I've uncovered with new revelations from the polling data today and what could possibly be the most shocking close race in the 2024 presidential election. Make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so what's going on in New York is something really fascinating, right? We've seen Donald Trump improve with African Americans, Hispanics, union voters, working class people, non-college educated voters. They're all moving towards Trump in the polling data, and him being up in the popular vote, in my estimates, by about 3.5 percentage points in the popular vote. The movement's gonna have to come from Texas, Florida. It's gonna have to come somewhere from California and New York in order for him to be up. For him to be up, he's gonna have to gain in those four big states, and one of those states is New York. And they've actually been polling the state of New York. And here's the problem, right? So they put out a Harris plus 12 poll, right? It seems somewhat normal, even though that's not very normal. And I'll get to a second as to why. That's already pretty bad for Harris, the fact that she's down that much. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look at something fairly interesting. We're going to look at the 2020 polling in the state of New York. The aggregate overestimated Joe Biden in the state of New York by 6 points. And when we look at the state of New York, he won it by 23. Here's the problem, right? We don't have a lot of polling. It's literally just Siena College and us. That's literally it. And we both show Harris plus 11, Harris plus here 12 with third parties included, Harris plus 12. So it's within that range, right? And we obviously weighed to a better sample. But the problem with Siena College, and number one, we're using an online panel, and those tend to skew left. We try to correct for that as best as we can for weighing for realistic party ID. But the problem with Siena College is that they've been historically wrong in New York. In fact, their final poll in the state of New York from September 27th to the 29th literally was released about 10 days after 4 years ago. So 10 days ahead of 4 years ago, they released a poll that had Biden up 32 points in the state of New York. A 9-point miss, guys. Guys, a 9-point miss. 9 points. So imagine you have a poll, right? Where it's a plus 32 Biden poll. And today, they come out with Harris plus 12. Guys, she's performing 20 points worse in the latest Siena College New York poll compared to the one that was released around this time. The one released around this time, she's performing 20 points worse. Donald Trump wasn't even cracking 30% in this poll. He is now at 40%, and it's actually one of his better polls because some of them he's cracking high 30s. He's actually at 40 in this one. And then the head-to-head, he's actually about at 42. Now, if you look, he's performing 20 points better than he was 4 years ago. And when you look, Biden won the state by 23. If you applied that cross-examination alone, the state is Harris plus 3, which sounds crazy, but we're going to get into something here that I think is going to very much intrigue people about the state of New York and may give it some more national attention. When we look at the sample for the latest New York Times poll, Democrats make up about half the sample, Republicans are 25%, independents are 24%. This is the problem. The New York Times CNN exit poll shows that Democrats were only 39% of the electorate. So they're oversampling Democrats. Republicans are at 30, so they're undersampling Republicans. And if we look at the independents, they're also undersampling independents. So you see that and you're like, whoa, that is a humongous drop. That is insane. And when we look at this, we look at the question, if the presidential race was held today, who would you vote for? Look who's winning independents. Donald Trump is winning independents by literally 24 points. Look at the sample in 2020. It's the same exact sample that led them to overestimate Joe Biden in the state of New York by 9 points. Democrats are at 50, Republicans at 25, Independents at 20. So they're still weighing for the same party sample, which led them to overestimating Joe Biden in the state. And when you look at the split here, this is very interesting. If you ask, who would you vote for today in the presidential race? Joe Biden is winning independent voters in the state of New York by 14 points. Donald Trump is now up with them by 24 points in the latest poll. That is a 38 net swing with independent voters in the state of New York in this poll. When looking at the crosstabs, Joe Biden ended up winning independents by 17. This poll had him up 14, so they actually underestimated him with independents. The problem is they basically got the entire state weighting completely wrong. And so you have polling which oversamples Democrats and undersamples Republicans and independents, which has Harris performing 20 points worse than the previous poll 4 years ago. What an utter disaster. The same Democrat Party sample in this poll. And Donald Trump in this poll is winning independents. He's actually up with them. He's winning men outright in the poll. He's actually winning men. Last time here, Joe Biden was winning men in this poll by literally 24 points. He's actually losing women by about 32, which is a little bit better than before. Looking at the ethnicity votes, Donald Trump is he's actually up with the white vote by about 3, and he was actually down with the white vote by 20 points in the last poll. Looking at this, African Americans, he's got about 11% in this poll. He got about roughly 4% in this poll. Only 4%. He is now polling at 11%, or let's see. Yeah, he's polling at about 11%. Kamala Harris is up with Hispanics by a little bit less than 20. Here, Joe Biden led Hispanics by over 60 points. Almost 60 points. You're seeing huge shifts in the polling data. And when you look at the African American vote back in 2020, if we were to actually go ahead and look at that, what's very fascinating is that Donald Trump got 6%, give or take. So they still underestimated him in the polling, and he still did better in New York City, guys. So he not only got only 6% of the black vote in 2020 and only got 22% of the Latino vote, and he still made gains in the state of New York. He still made gains in New York City. So he already improved in the urban areas in 2020, and now you see these double-digit shifts in his favor in pollsters where they overestimated Biden by like 10 points. And so this is what's interesting. I decided, you know what, let's create a polling average for the state of New York. We're going to weigh it to 2020. We're going to see where it's at. And guys, when you weigh the polling data by the 2020 electorate for the two Siena College polls that are fairly recent, and this one SoCal Strategies poll that we sponsored, guys, it is a tied race. It's a tied race. Donald Trump in the polling average is up by 0.2%, and it's a very narrow race. But again, those undecideds are fairly high at 5.5%. They could break any way, and since the state is not being polled as much, it's a little bit ambiguous because we still have a lot of undecideds in the polling data, so that really could affect the race. But Kennedy is at 3%, and Donald Trump got the endorsement from Kennedy. So this race, guys, is very unpredictable because Kennedy just gave Trump the endorsement, so that may throw things off. Maybe since the state's a little bit more liberal, maybe some of them will go back to Harris. But even, let's say all the Kennedy's vote stayed. Even if Harris got all of the Kennedy votes or got all of the undecideds, she's only at 49%. She's not even cracking 50, guys. And here's the thing. In the polling where the Democrats are overestimated by a ridiculous amount, She is not even she's barely cracking 50 in some of these. And so guys, this is going to be an unpredictable race. And when we factor this polling average into my model, the state of New York becomes just about an 8-point victory for Kamala Harris, a 7-point win, which if you have Kennedy votes defect to Harris and you have most of the undecideds go to Harris, which I expect to be the case, would make sense. But don't be surprised if this race comes down to single digits. Even with it, don't be surprised if it even comes within 5. There are a lot of union workers, and we saw the Teamsters. That poll has Trump leading Harris by double digits with those type of voters. And when we look at the governor's race, this is the biggest indicator. When you look at that governor's race, guys, look at the margin. Kathy Hochul, won the race by only 6 points in a midterm in the state of New York. Now, yes, it's a midterm, and you can't really relate midterms like that. But how did the state of New York shift that much, that fast to the right in a midterm? There is at least some movement. And I want to talk about something, guys, because Lee Zeldin is not your typical rhino Republican. He is a candidate. He was a congressman who literally was going to vote against the 2020 certification for the election. So this is a pretty MAGA candidate for New York. And it is a low turnout election. But the fact he got this close, and the fact that Hochul performed this badly, is a bad sign. Looking at this, the Democrats should be doing better in these off years. They should be doing better even in 2014. Even in 2014, when the Republicans had a red wave, Andrew still won by 14 points. He still won by 14 points in this race. He still won by 14. Even in 2010, in this red wave year, he won by like 30-something points, guys. So they really don't have an excuse. They really don't. Look, 2006 blue wave year, a little bit, it's iffy, but like Andrew still did good even in red wave years. He still won by 30 points in red wave years. And on top of that, in 2022, the electorate was more educated and it favored the Democrats. So if anything, Hochul should have done better. But the fact that it was this close while Pennsylvania was a 15-point win for Mastriano, guys, this is a little interesting. There are warning signs for this being a potentially close race. Now, do I think Donald Trump's going to win the state? No, I don't think so. But again, this is something to think about, guys. This race will be closer than people expect. And if it is a 3-4 point race, or if it's even closer than that, you would have heard it from me first. Do not be surprised if the state of New York ends up being a very competitive race. I'll be making my final calls close to November. But guys, this is a race that could potentially come down to just a couple of points for Kamala Harris and would be one of the worst performances a Democrat put up. And guys, this is another thing. How is Kamala Harris only leading in New York by 12 in the same poll where Biden led by 32 4 years back, and she's leading by 6 nationally somehow? Somehow the race is tied nationally in the latest New York Times / Siena College poll. How is the national race tied when she's down, when she's performing 20 points worse than a poll 4 years back, with a poll that underestimated Donald Trump in the state by 10 points? So guys, really give this thought. I've really put together something that I think is compelling, that actually makes sense. Make sure to go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe if you want more content just like this. Comment down below and follow me on X, and I will see you guys in the next video.